In September 1939, when the war had just begun, Miss Batchelor retired from her post as superintendent of the Protestant mission schools in the city of Ranpur. Her elevation to superintendent had come towards the end of her career in the early part of 1938. At the time, she knew it was a sop, but tackled the job with her characteristic application to every trivial detail, which meant her successor, a Miss Jolly, would have her work cut out untangling some of the confusion Miss Batchelor usually managed to leave behind, like clues to the direction taken by the cheery and indefatigable leader of a paper chase, whose ultimate destination was not clear to anybody, including herself. Miss Batchelor, christened Barbara, Barbie for short, knew she had many shortcomings, most of which were due to two besetting sins. She seldom stopped talking and was inclined to act without thinking. She had often prayed to be blessed with a more cautious and tranquil nature, but had always done so by falling enthusiastically on her knees and speaking to God aloud, which may have accounted for the fact that these prayers were never answered. Her attempts to reform without intercession were also unsuccessful. When she held her tongue, people asked rather anxiously about her health, not without cause, because the stress of keeping quiet gave her headaches, and the headaches were not helped by the worry of work piling up if she put any of it off to think about it first. So in the end she was content to bear the burden of her own nature, in the belief that God had known best what was right for her. Secretly she was rather proud of her voice. It carried. Barbie was a believer in the goodwill and good sense of established authority. If the mission had told her that her furrow was not ploughed, that she was good for a few years yet, she would have squared her shoulders, spat on her palms, and pressed on, grateful to be made use of. But the mission said no such thing, and she outwardly accepted the situation with her usual bustling equanimity. Inwardly she accepted it with mingled relief and apprehension. "I shall be glad to slow down," she said. People smiled. They could not imagine Barbie except at top speed. In putting her out to grass, the mission, which always looked after its own, would have provided her with temporary accommodation in Ranpur, and helped to establish her eventually in Darjeeling or Nainital, where they had twilight bungalows. They would have given her an assisted passage home, but the war made that difficult, and in any case Barbie said she didn't want it. She had not been in England for 30 years. It seemed that Barbie wanted nothing except her pension and her freedom to go where and do what she liked. She let it be known that she had plans. She said she did not intend to be idle in retirement. She would find a pied-à-terre and devote herself to some kind of voluntary work. She had saved. She was perfectly content, perfectly happy. She would always be available should the mission need her help or advice. They had only to ask, and she would come, at the double. The facts were that she had no plans and no clear idea where to go or what to do. She would have liked to be of use to someone or something, but could not visualize whom or what. On the whole, it did not matter much, so long as being useful left her with a certain amount of time to devote to a personal problem. Barbie had what her mother would have called a secret sorrow. She had been a fairly competent teacher, especially of small children, because they brought out her maternal instincts, and she had often been rewarded by proofs of her capacity to earn affection and esteem from pupils and their parents. But to Barbie, the teaching of reading, writing, and arithmetic had never been as important as the teaching of Christianity. For almost as long as she could remember, she had believed in God, in Christ the Redeemer, and in the existence of heaven. They were very real to her. The fate of unbelievers was equally real, particularly the fate of those who were unbelievers through no fault of their own. This was why, when both her parents were dead, she had given up her job at a church school in South London, joined the mission, and come to India. To bring even one Hindu or Muslim child to God struck her as a very satisfactory thing to do, and she imagined that in the mission it would be open to her to do this for scores, possibly hundreds. Once in India, she was disappointed to find that all the emphasis was upon the mission's educational function, that the mission gates were ajar to let Indian children in to learn things that would be useful to them, but not wide open in a way that encouraged teachers to go out and bring the children in, as into a fold.